Hi, and welcome to another episode of Kuntarkis. My name is Michael Yon, and this episode is Aboard the Spaceship. This is yet another out of body experience that Kuntarkis has had, and I just had to share. So, here's Kuntarkis.
I had lunch and I was sitting there doing a meditation. And suddenly I felt this energy hit me like a ton of bricks. Really, really hit me. It was so vibrant through my entire inner being and outer being. I could feel as if I stood in front of myself. I could see my entire aura vibrating so wide. That's how it felt. It was so powerful. And then I realized the reason why, and I allowed it to happen. But all that knowledge now is within my cellular memory, and I've got to bring it forth. So this is just a simple overview of what the experience was last night. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Um, During the night, I was just talking to myself and doing my affirmations, right? And I remember that I was on the seventh affirmation, and suddenly I felt like I was as light as a feather. And I said, "Oh, I think I'm about to go somewhere." I really do. It feels a little bit like when I went to seventh dimension. That's how it felt. But I knew I wasn't going there, but I wasn't sure where I was going. But I allowed it to go, and I said, "I'm good. I'm ready." And suddenly I was in space, and I was flying in like I don't know what it was. It looked like a pod, but it had all these instruments, but I couldn't touch. And it was like a single little spaceship, small, very small. And it was literally going on its own, automatic pilot, whatever it was. I just let it be. I actually got probably way past the moon, somewhere past the moon. I'm not sure exactly where. I don't know that. I don't know that outer space as well as I maybe should. But I remember passing the moon very quickly, and I passed very close to the moon. And then I just went straight to the right after passing the moon. And it felt as if I traveled, I'm not joking, probably could be 40, 45 minutes, could even be 50 minutes. And I just sat there and just enjoyed. I saw other planets. I saw massive stars that looked like meteors. They were monstrous. It looked like they could have been a planet, but they weren't a planet. And suddenly I looked in front and I could see this little object. There was nothing. There was no stars, no planets. It was just this little object all by itself. And it seemed to be shiny, like a bronzy, there's a word for it, but not metallic. There's another word for it. It starts with M, I think, and it's like a grey black. Pewter. That's it, pewter. Thank you. Like pewter bronze. That's what it looked like. As I got closer, I was looking to the outside of it, and I say it would have been about, maybe 60 feet across and about 80 feet high, maybe more. I could be, not seeing it the way I should see it. And it was completely circular in all directions. It seemed to be slightly, when I say taller, like longer, and it was long like vertical, not horizontal, vertical. It had lots of windows like portholes, but they were shaped very differently. And suddenly this vent opened up and it went in. The little ship went in. And there to greet me was a man by the name of Rama, hang on, Ramaki Mornasha. That was his name. And to look at him was really interesting. He had a much, much wider face than the normal wide face of a human, a little bit longer, a little bit more to say, it looked like it was slightly out of shape to his body size, but he wasn't. He was 2 meters tall. But when he turned sideways, his head was, how would you say, shaped more inwardly back. And his ears, where ours sit, they would have sat at least 3 or 4 inches further back in the head. It's like they could hear really well, and the ears were like a cup in a way, not big, but a cup where the sound would just go straight in. It was quite unusual. The neck was wide, and it looked like he had veins in his neck, but if he turned sideways, it looked narrow. The chest was not big. It looked a little bit more like the ilias in a way, but they seemed to be muscular, and he had dark skin, not like an African, more like an Indian, like from India. And when he spoke, he actually spoke to me in English, which really amazed me. And he had an accent. I mean, he's an alien, so yeah, of course they can have an accent. He does understand Sanskrit very well, but he spoke to me in English, perfect English. It was quite amazing. His eyes were sort of like almond shaped, but sort of big eyes, but almond shaped, like that real almond shape, more like a diamond in a way. And his eyes were sort of yellow, but they seemed to have like a grey area around the eye and then black. Very different eyes. His nose, a little bit like us, but a little bit more punchy and flatter. And they did have 2 nostrils, not just one, like some do. So I found that actually quite interesting. The clothes that they wear, some of the beings that I saw were wearing tight type clothes like a suit, and the color was sort of more like an orangey color with black in it. Some had yellow on with green. And this one, Ramaki, he actually had a loose type pants on with a loose type top on that looked, I don't know, it's hard to say, well, like a suit of some description. So he was what would be called, I suppose, the captain, the admiral, or whatever it may be, of his ship. The funny thing about the ship, he took me, after introducing himself and introducing me to many of his staff, I would say, which were very interesting and very pleasant to talk to, really friendly, beautiful smiles. You could see that they are the type of beings that smile from the heart. Like if I smile, I do smile from the heart. People have said to me, you don't smile very much. I say, that's because I smile from within. Bit of a joke. But on the ship, when we started going through it, it had an elevator. Actually, it had 3 elevators, which is interesting. And it has 6 actual levels in that actual ship. And in the levels of 3 and 4 is their motoring system. Now, I didn't ask a lot of questions because I was gobsmacked by what I was experiencing. I know that I've had experiences that probably would override this one, but I've never experienced being taken like I was directly into a spaceship that was fully circular, massive in its own size. And he showed me the motor system, and they said they run through like an energy field of propulsion, something like that. So they have a propulsion system that actually operates their ship, and having the motor system where they have it on the 3rd level keeps the ship perfectly balanced in all its movements. It can go straight quick, down quick, sideways quick, any direction it wants. It can even spin, and the occupants within the ship will not even hardly feel it. It'll be like just a slight movement because the energy fields are identical, so it keeps them perfectly balanced. And that's interesting. There were no overweight alien beings. They all looked fit, happy, smiling, all around 2 meters tall. The females were more slender, well-shaped. The males, they looked stronger, but nothing like you would see on Earth, where, you know, a person's got bulky muscles and all that. They were sort of shaped like my arms are shaped, in a sense where the muscles have a definition, definitely a very refined shape structure, which is interesting. So I'd say they're very solid and very strong beings. What else was there? Oh, do you have any questions about that so far?
So they took you to levels 3 and 4, and you saw the motor system. Where else did they take you, and what did you talk about?
They took me to all the accommodation area, and the accommodation area is amazing. It goes in a complete circle, and what it is, it has two sections of this circle. I'm just trying to find how I'm going to describe this. There is an elevator that runs in the front of the ship from a certain level all the way down to the base. Then there are two elevators on the left and the right. So in other words, you have three elevators. And on the actual part where the accommodation is, when we came out of the elevator, if you're looking out the front window type thing, it was on the left. And when you came out, there were round corridors with cutouts in between, and there were rooms. There were lots of rooms. And the bedrooms weren't big, but they had everything they needed. Every single room had a toilet, a cleansing area, which is, they call it a cleansing area, which is basically a shower. It had a very unique little kitchen. It had a bed that literally lifted up and went into the wall automatically by the press of a button and came out. They had little areas where you could put clothes, I would say. So it was so beautifully shaped. It looked like plastic, but it wasn't plastic. It was solid. I even touched it, and he smiled at me when I did that. And you know what he said to me?
What's that?
He said, "No, Kuntarkis, that is not plastic." Because he knows we have a major issue on this planet when it comes to plastic. Very bad for our bodies, like aluminium. It actually helps kill off brain cells, PVC, as well as aluminium particles. I'll talk about that in a minute. So I went through about, must be five different types of accommodations where you'll get a husband and wife who are together, right? They don't have a marriage system like we do, he explained. When two beings, male, female only, male and male, female to female, there's no homosexuals, there's no pedophiles or anything like that. There's no emotional imbalances, which is really interesting. They have their own room, which has two beds. And what happens, a bed folds out and then another part folds out again automatically. So they can have the same bed to sleep with. If they choose not to, they can leave one folded, which folds underneath and then back into the wall, or they can have two separate, which is interesting also. So their system of living is very, very interesting. Down at the base level, which was also a very interesting area for me, they have a flat floor system with all their, what do they call them? They're like the same little ship that came and got me, a pod, like a pod. It's a single. They have many little singles, and they have also doubles. And they're all on. They also have other machines that seem to have a tracking system similar to ours on Earth, where they can go over rough terrain and all that type of stuff. So they are what they would call is a scientific research, or what would the word be? I suppose organization. And they're very closely linked to the seventh dimensional beings, the Nipulans, right? And I remember what Vimera said to me in the last visit that I had with that being. Vimera said that you will find, Kuntarkis, over the next 18 months to 2 years of your human existence on Earth, you will have many visitations, right? Now, the reason these beings have come to me, this is interesting. We were talking about this yesterday. The Muhas, because they're closer than the Muhas are to Earth, they also do interaction and help each other. So it's going to be this vessel will take me to the planet and to meet the Muhas and live on their planet for those 5 days or whatever it may be. Might be less, might be a fraction more. I don't know the situation at the moment. I don't know enough about it. But they're going to be my transport.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yes. Yeah. And when I first got there and I met him, right, he said to me, would you just come with me, Kuntarkis, for one moment? And I did. And we went to the level below the control room. And he asked me if I would stand inside this cubicle. And I said, funny thing is, I said to him, I said, I just finished writing a book called The World Conspiracy. And he looked at me. He said, oh. And I said, very similar. I described the chamber that you're going to put me in. And what it did, it totally annihilated the entire being that was in there, including the bones. And he laughed his head off. It was so funny to hear him laugh. Really comical, very comical. And he said, no, he said, I promise you, he said, we will not do that to you. He said, at least not this time anyway. So they have a sense of humor. So I got in and the door came and closed and you could hear the pressure seal. And what went on, I could feel this vibration going through my whole body for about a minute. And suddenly I looked down and I was completely physical. So they created something. I didn't even ask the question, but they created something that would make my body appear physical.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really, really interesting. So there are so many different civilizations with all these different forms of technology. And this is one that I've never heard of. And when it opened up, you could hear it like a compression opening up and air being sucked in. I came out and he shook my hand. He said, this is what you do as humans on Earth. I said, yes. So he shook my hand and he said, how does that feel? I said, physical. Right? And because I noticed when we first met, he never touched me at all. Never tried to shake my hand or my shoulder or touch my shoulder because he didn't want to scare me in case I suddenly projected back into my body or got lost in space. I think that's more to the point. Because I wouldn't have got scared anyway. It wouldn't have worried me. But I think they have certain ways of doing things, and that's that. So that was really interesting. Yeah, and they also have a section. I think it's the one above the base level. That's right, the one above the base level. They actually grow a lot of food, and they have a storage room for food. On that same level, they also have quite a large, massive kitchen with lots of tables that are actually mantled to the floor of the that level, that second level. And the chairs, they slide out like on runners. And all you do is push it back and forth and it clicks in, and that's where you're going to sit. And if you stand, you can just give it one pull and it will loosen, and then you can pull it back again and it locks. So it's a sort of a locking system so the chairs don't go flying all over the place and hit someone and kill them. So everything is a fixture, which is interesting. Then he took me up to the top floor. And when I went in there, all these beings turned, looked at me and smiled. There were females and there were males. And he introduced me very, very quickly to each and every one of them. There was about 11, I believe, and they literally drive the ship, and that's where they drive it from, the top level. And they have two massive screens, one in the front, one in the back. But they also, he showed me, can press a button, and suddenly you can't see in you can't see in, but you can still see out. It's like they've learned how to manipulate solid matter. So that's different again, very different again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you talk about anything, like, do you remember any discussions you had?
not at this moment. As I said to you, all of this flowed back to me, not just in verbal, but also in pictures.
Mm.
And I was really trying hard to remember it all. And there's probably some I still haven't remember, but I will. And I got to get on a computer and write some stuff out so I can bring it back. And I know that's how it comes back to me. Once I'm sitting down writing, I can feel it, even see the pictures. And then I can talk about the pictures because I can't do anything with those pictures that are within my cellular memory, which is the interesting factor. This female being came up to me and she said, "Excuse me, Kuntarkis, can I ask you a question or I will forget if I do not ask you now?" And he actually said straight out, "Please do." He called her a strange name. It was like Laimilatal or something like that. And I didn't catch it. So I didn't bother with it because I don't want to pronounce a name that's incorrect. I want the name to be 100% correct. So I will get it once I go back in my cellular memory. And what she asked me was intriguing. She said to me, "How do you feel being in a human body for only a short period of time when it comes to human life?" And I said, "Well," I said, "I've had, I think now 4 going on 5, I think I have to add them up. I think 5 different physical life experiences. But this one that I have now is a walk-in body." And she said, "Yes, we know this. We have had that explained to us by Vimera." I said, okay. So Vimera would have all my information. And she said, "Yes." I said, "Well," I said, "I feel pretty good about it." I said, "Sometimes I feel limited because," she said, "your limitation is only by what you're feeling, how you've been conditioned." That's what prompted me to write what I wrote about conditioning, mate.
Mm.
Because that conditioning that's passed on genetically from our parents, we mostly have no awareness whatsoever that we have the characteristics of our mother and father. Sometimes equally balanced, most times more so to the mother or more so to the father. The funny thing is, the female child seems to have more characteristics to the father, and the child that's the son has more characteristics to the mother. That's interesting. I've never worked out why, but that seems to be quite a common factor here on Earth. So she was very happy that I answered. And then she said, "Can I just quickly ask you one more thing?" She said, "How are you feeling about having a child so late in your physical life?" I said, "Well, because I don't live to age, it doesn't seem to bother me so much. But sometimes I feel when I look in a mirror, I feel like I'm 100 years old." And she laughed, and so did he. And she said, "Do you know why?" I said, "Yes." I said, "When a child plays up and they know they're doing it on purpose, which is quite common with children, they set off a stress factor within the human body. And that stress factor is a condition. So I actually welcome it so I can learn to deal with it and let it go. I don't see it as a negative. I might feel that it's a negative, but I really push the point to see it as being a positive to turn out positive." And she looked at me and smiled, and she said, "Thank you so much." And she left. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. Very interesting.
My gosh. This concludes another episode of Kuntarkis. If you'd like to find out more about Kuntarkis, find his website, which is etcconsciousness.com. He has articles there, he has his books listed there, and also if you have any reason to contact us in general for any reason, just email kuntarkis@gmail.com. That's it for now. Thanks so much for listening. My name is Michael Yon, and stay tuned for more.